A very good evening to all investors gathered here today. Two conflicting monsoon forecasts have created confusion among investors in the market. SkyMed anticipates a below average monsoon, while IMD expects a normal one. Well, as a retail investor, let's find out how this can impact our portfolio. Towards the end, we'll also be having a Q&A session. You can drop in any queries you have in the chat box below. Over to you, Mr. Sunil.
Thanks a lot, Jason, and very warm welcome all of you. I think Jason started on a very perfect note. Confusion है दिमाग में क्या होने वाला है monsoon का. Now which is, monsoon is becoming a issue, especially because of couple of things. Number one, we had a very unseasonal rain and hailstorm, and that really impacted the Rabi crop. Now southwest monsoon, so those who are little not aware about what is Rabi crop happens during winter time. What is Kharif crop? Kharif crop happens during June to September when the monsoon happens, am I right? So Rabi crop, that winter crop did have an impact. While the government maintains that there is no major impact, but some experts do make us believe that there will be an impact in terms of the food grain production. Number two, the quality of the produce. But that's not the only reason why this time monsoon is very, very critical, because this is the time where inflation has become a bone of contention for the equity investors. Not a single day in the Indian equity market or the foreign global market where people do not talk about inflation. Now, why inflation is very, very critical? Because if inflation is a function of food inflation. In India, the 40% of the CPI inflation is accounted by food inflation. Now, if there is a less monsoon for some unknown for this El Nino effect, RBI, which has taken a little pause right now in that rate hike, will start increasing the rate of interest, and which is not. So, had it been a normal time, this issue would not have been more of a concern. It is coming at a time when the situations are really very, very challenging. And hence today in this webinar, I'll try to give a very direct answer to three things. Of course, I'm going to educate you also what is El Nino, what is La Nina in a most simplest manner, what has been the track record of SkyMed and IMD, and how seriously you should take them. What's the impact because of monsoon is not so good on the food grain production? What is an impact if, for example, if it is below average on inflation? And what is an impact, or what could be the impact on the equity market? And of course, I know you people will ask, kaun sa sector mein zyada impact hoga? That also I'm going to discuss in this webinar. So that's how I basically divided my presentation, the simplest form, so that you people can understand and make sense of it. So you don't, once you understand, you listen to this webinar, then you don't have to bother anything. You don't have to read this further on El Nino. Why? Because whatever possible things that one could cover has already been covered in this webinar. So please listen to me in a very carefully. With this, just before I start my webinar, just a disclaimer that this webinar is only for an education purpose. Whenever you invest in the equity market, it does carry a little higher amount of risk, and past performance should not be considered as an indicator of future returns. So, theme of this webinar is market and the monsoon. And with that, what happens to? Okay, so what is El Nino? You have been hearing this for quite some time, and La Nina. El Nino is a thing which, what does it mean? It means that there is a deficit rain or below average rain in country like India. So El Nino is not good for country like India. It may be good for someone else. Why? Because it's a pattern where someone will receive less monsoon, someone will receive higher monsoon, better monsoon. What is La Nina is exactly opposite of that. La Nina means ज़्यादा monsoon, ज़्यादा बारिश. So that means if India receives more monsoon, someone else is getting lesser monsoon. Both simple equation. Nature has been very, very this one. It balances out. So this time El Nino, India can have an impact of an El Nino. And that's what SkyMet and IMD, as Jason was saying in the beginning of the webinar, one suggesting average, another suggesting below average. Now, El Nino is not good for India. It could be good for someone else in the other parts of the world. And normally, El Nino lasts for 9 to 12 months. The maximum in the recent history, what we have seen, was 18 months. That's it. On the other hand, La Nina seems to be more little longer. वो 1 से 3 साल तक चलता है. And this is the 4th year, I believe. The last year was the 4th year in a row where we had seen the La Nina impact. La Nina में अपने को normally ज़्यादा monsoon आता है. Now that's what is basically happened. So El Nino, La Nina. These are sounds little technical word to you. तो simple है. If El Nino, that means deficit rain, likely deficit rain. La Nina मतलब good or excess rain. Simple philosophy. From today, you don't have to get confused between El Nino and La Nina. That's the one. Now, what is SkyMet talked about? What is IMD talked about? One has to really go into the granular details to understand what is this. Now, SkyMet said 94%, and that's become below average. Why it's become below average? Because the 90 to 95% LPA is nothing but the long period average. And that's why it become below average, because the definition of a below average is rainfall getting 90 to 95. Since SkyMet is saying 94, that's why it become a below average. But IMD is saying is 96, which is normal. 96 to 104 is a range for that. So what I've done, I've given you now, I'm making you smarter investors, so you don't have to get confused. When someone says there is an excess rainfall this year, that means probability of rain having 110% of the LPA. If it says above normal, that is between 105 to 110. If they say normal is 96 to 104. If it says below normal, that is says 90 to 95. And deficit is less than 90. Deficit is something which means India can have a drought-like situation. Unfortunately, we did not have for many years in a row, but that's what it means actually. And unfortunately, India is more dependent because not many places are irrigated, have a proper irrigation facility. Monsoon becomes a very critical for agri. In fact, government has been spending a lot of time and energy on that irrigation as a facility. Still a lot of work needs to be done. Har ghar mein jal, I think that's also the same way we should have har khet mein nal kind of a stuff, so that the irrigation facility becomes easy. If it becomes easy, I think our dependence on the monsoon will get. Now let's look at the difference between SkyMet and the IMD. Both almost agree. SkyMet says 0% probability that India will have a excess rainfall. IMD still believes 3% probability. SkyMet is saying it's not ruling out this one. It says 15% probability that India will receive above normal rainfall, while IMD says only 11%. So what is getting excess mein, if you combine excess and above normal, both SkyMet and IMD are almost similar. Total becomes 14, SkyMet becomes 15. So 1 point ka difference hai. So remember again, there is not too much of a difference between SkyMet and the IMD. So because below average and average sounds little scary and looks like a very huge difference because of the range, it has become below average and average. One is just below 1 point below average, that's why 94 becomes below average. Normal is 96. So दो का फर्क में ये फर्क हुआ. SkyMet says there is a 25% probability that India will have a normal monsoon, while IMD says 35% probability. Huge difference, am I right? 25 कहाँ पे, 35 कहाँ पे? Again, SkyMet says 40% probability that India will have a below normal. That's the highest probability that he has given. But in case of IMD, the highest probability is normal. Am I right? With below normal probability, the IMD is only 29 and deficit both seems to be of the same page, 20 and 22. Now, having said that, there is always a plus and minus variance that happens in terms of predictions. So 95 fold can become 89 and it could become 99. Same logic applies for the IMD also. 96 can become 91 and 101. All right. So right now, even if you look at the probability of IMD, 51% probability is that below normal and deficit. 51%. So it's like a tossing a coin kind of a stuff. 50-50 hai. While in the case of SkyMed, 60% probability that India will receive below normal or deficit rainfall. So ye mota difference hai. Now the question does comes to mind, how seriously we should take this prediction. Am I right? Because ultimately, should we take at all this prediction seriously or not? And what has been the track record? So what we have done is basically we look at last 5 years. Unfortunately, the success rate is only 20%. I again repeat, the last 5 years, out of 5 years, 4 years both have gone wrong. Only in 2021, both has been dot on. And that's again the 5% variance. Because of why? In 2021, IMD predicted 101 LPA, it became actually 105. While SkyMed had predicted 103, it became 105. What has happened is that SkyMed in 2019 had predicted India will have a below normal rainfall. Below normal kya hai? 90 to 95. They predicted 93. Can you imagine? Actual rainfall was 110, which is what? Above normal. Is someone saying below normal actually happen? Something similar is they also predicting 2023. So we don't have to take this IMD or SkyMed too seriously at this point of time. Why? Because they track record. And what I've also observed is not that they always go on the wrong side. In the sense, they are either pessimistic or too optimistic. It works both the way. I'll explain you how. In 2018, they said 97, actual 91 aaya, to niche aaya. In 2019, they said 96, it moved up, to 110 ho gaya. Again it moved up, again it moved up, and again it moved up. So normally, they are more pessimistic, sorry, I stand corrected, they are more pessimistic in terms of actually is much higher. While in case of SkyMed, is also little pessimistic. Why? Here they were right. They were optimistic in 2018. Why? Because it was down. Aaya. But 93 became 110. So uppar gaya. 100 became 109. So they 103 is this 5. 98 this. In other words, normally our weather forecasters are more pessimistic about the prediction and the actual is much better. Am I right? And I think that's what we need to understand very clearly, that probability, that's number one, the prediction will come true is only 20%. And number two, probability is that they would normally are underestimating the rainfall. In both the cases IMD. And that's one of the reasons market has not gone down. When SkyMed came out with the prediction, market did not go down. In fact, I'm happy to inform you that market is almost recovered whatever it lost in 2020. We are almost at the same level of 2022 now when we close that. So market smartly recovered that. And if you look at today's FII numbers also, they are very, very significantly up. So FIIs have also come back. Today we all know that inflation in the US as well as in India has been much lower than what was predicted, what was expected. So I think that's also happy news on that front. So that's a track record. Now let's go further, because my job is to, are they predicting both SkyMed as well as the IMD throughout the country normal or below normal? No. there are certain pockets in the country that could receive either below normal or deficit range. It's not that complete country is going to face below. So दिमाग में से पहले वो तो बात निकाल देना है, because see, some journalists asked me today, and I also had to make him understand that we are not talking about the gloom and doom for the country. Even if they assume that the SkyMed prediction comes to below normal, okay? They are not predicting. What are they predicting? Deficit range for western and the northern parts, some central and eastern parts, but they do expect some southern parts except Kerala and coastal Karnataka to have a normal. So it's not that doom and gloom kind of a scenario. IMD to believe that either it should be normal to below normal in some parts of northwest, in parts of west central India, and some pockets of northeast India, and normal to above normal peninsular India, which covers nearby 6 states, and adjoining east central India, and northeast India, and some parts of northwest. So it's not that, and in fact in the past also that's always happened. It's not that the monsoon, even if it is below normal, it's going to happen throughout the country. Why it's very critical to understand that? Because it also defines what kind of output and which food grade production can get impacted. For example, cotton is mainly produced in state like Gujarat, or groundnut basically that get produced in this one, that get impacted. Am I right? Why? Because that's the way. So if Gujarat में बारिश कम आया तो ground production could be less. अगर cotton could be less अगर गुजरात में बारिश कम आया तो, पर गुजरात में बारिश आया तो अच्छा हो सकता है. So I think we need to also understand, don't get too much carried about. Now SkyMed has given one more interesting thing which I would really like it. What SkyMed is saying, they've given, the season is June to September, they've given month-wise what could be the rainfall probability. So in the month of June, 99% LPI bola. That is very good. In the month of July also it's 95, which is also very closer to good. Am I right? And they've given the probability of, normal, above normal. This is the probability that they are talking about. So they are very, very confident here. These are the two places where they've given highest, 70 and 50. So what is SkyMed is predicting is that if you have to divide the June to September into two parts, first half and second half, what SkyMed is saying that second half में थोड़ा problem India में हो सकता है. And that's why below normal in the month of August, they are saying 60% probability, and in September, they are saying 70% probability of below normal. So even SkyMed believes that June and July will have a very good monsoon, but the problem of El Nino may occur somewhere in the second half. So it's very, very critical what kind of rainfall India receives. I have been informed that 1/3 of total rainfall, or maybe not 1/3, maybe more, about 40% of the rainfall in the country like India happens in the month of July. So if June and July are very good, I think it would give a lot of relief in terms of to the overall monsoon. Now, El Nino is one, but there are also variety in that. Am I right? El Nino sounds very negative. Acha, cholesterol. Are you aware about cholesterol? Where there are good cholesterol, there are bad cholesterol, and then there are also limits. Am I right? कि हर एक कोलेस्ट्रॉल का लिमिट भी होता है ना, कौन सा कोलेस्ट्रॉल में इतना है. You need to have a cholesterol in your body. Am I right? But there are range. In sugar also, there are, in the fasting sugar, they said you have pre-diabetic, non-diabetic and diabetic, and there is range. Same way, El Nino also has a severity of a problem. Whether it's a weak El Nino, whether it's a moderate El Nino. So जैसे El Nino आता है ना, हम लोग खबर जाते हैं. Am I right? But we need to also understand, is it going to be a weak El Nino? Is it going to be a moderate El Nino? Is it going to be a strong El Nino? Or is it going to be a very strong El Nino? What is the prediction given by SkyMed? The SkyMed has given that this year El Nino will be weak. Even IMD believes that. It's not that SkyMed only says. Even IMD says there will be a El Nino impact. But the El Nino impact would be weak. इन अदर वर्ड्स, इसकी जैसे आपको बुखार होता है, वायरल इन्फेक्शन होता है, कोई ज़्यादा तेज वायरल लगता है, कोई बड़ा या छोटा वायरल इफेक्ट है. सो इवन तो दिस वे अल नीनो, it is going to be weak this year. Now let's try to understand which are the years where we have a weak El Nino, which are the years we had a moderate, strong and very strong. So in last many years, only 1 year we had a very strong El Nino, that is FY 15-16, that was 2015 ka southwest monsoon. 2 El Nino we had seen, if you remember, it was a very tough time for India. The day Modi became a prime minister, 14-15, we had a El Nino effect. 15-16, we had a very strong El Nino effect. And 18-19, so 4-5 saal in a row, we had a very weak monsoon. Okay, so 2 times we had a weak El Nino, that was FY 14-15 and 18-19. That is 14 and 18 calendar year, we had a El Nino but weak El Nino. Moderate was in 2000, southwest monsoon of 2000 and southwest west of 2009. Strong was very way back, 87. So normally what has happened, I must tell you that, India has been fortunate enough that in the last 2 decades or so, only 1 year we had a very strong El Nino effect. The last strong El Nino effect was in 91-92, so बहुत ज़्यादा time हो गया. So fortunately, whenever we had a El Nino, it was weak or moderate. So that's another good. And this time, even the prediction of El Nino is only a weak. So I think that's a one big consolidation we have. Now try to understand what would happen in case if there will be El Nino, what impact it has historically. 2015, 2014, 2018, 2016. I'm not going to 2002 or 9000, 2010. Oh, that was very बहुत पीछे चले गए history में. So I'm not going to 87, 88, 90 or 90 because it may not be relevant at that point. Because India, in terms of fertilizer production, in terms of irrigation, we have covered a lot of grounds in last 1 decade and 2 decades. Okay, and hence to look at going to make and making a sense would not be very, very good. Number one. Number two, you may not be aware, but a lot of satellites have gone in the orbit, and that's also helping us to predict the what we call क्या बोलते हैं, monsoon prediction has become much more accurate. So hence I don't want to go into 2 weeks. I'm just going into 3 period, 2014, 2018 or 2015, to have understand whenever there was a weak El Nino impact, what happened to the food grain production, what happened to the inflation, and what happened to the equity market. And very strong जब था 2015, तभी क्या हुआ था. So we can learn from the history and try to understand what happens to what we should expect. Food grain में क्या होगा? Because of that food grain में inflation में क्या होगा? Because at RBI may start hiking the rate of interest or not, that can impact the market sentiment. And last but not the least, equity. Because सबको हम लोग को यही देखना है, भाई अपना पैसा बनेगा कि नहीं बनेगा अगर El Nino आया या नहीं आया. So let's try to understand. So first let me try to see on food grade production, because that's the starting point, because food grain production will result into inflation and inflation will result into market conditions. So let's try to understand. 2013-2014. So what I've done, I've looked at the financial year. What was the 13-14 was a normal year, am I right? And this was a El Nino year. So I'm comparing normal year with the El Nino impact. Now if you look at it, so India, and this is the total food grain production, so I think you will get a lot of knowledge here today. Okay, most of the produce that India does is rice and the wheat. If you look at these 2 columns, 1066 and 9, almost 200 million tons against 2650. So that gives an idea what happened. Now in 2014, India's both rice as well as the wheat production was down. And overall food grain production was down by 5%. One of the biggest fall was wheat, small millets, and the barley. They sent the biggest experience. So yes, El Nino impacted food grain production in 2014 by 5%. as compared to the normal year. What happened to the 2018, which is again El Nino year? There was no impact overall. Why? Because total food production remained the same. But वहाँ पे अपने wheat was 10% down. This time the wheat was up by 4%. So is the case with paddy. In other words, the only one casualty was pulses, 13% down. So 2014, yes, impact was severe. 2018, the impact of weak El Nino was not that significant. But let's look at when the strong El Nino was there. तभी क्या हुआ? And what has come as a surprise to me, that even in 2015, when there was a strong El Nino, India's food grade production did not decline. Of course, it has a lower base of 2520. When I compare with 2850, it does look a very, because the 2 years in a row, we had weak El Nino and then strong El Nino, am I right? And did impact 2 years in a row. But otherwise, that weak converting into El Nino did not impact so much into the food grain production. But what got impacted in 2015 was jawar and to some extent what we call nutricereals. That basically got impacted. But total pulses was down by 5%. So 18 there was no impact. 15 there was no impact on this one. 2014 we did have an impact, and that could also be the reason why. Could be because the Modi government had hardly any time to work through to the monsoon, because they just assumed the power and monsoon arrived. Am I right? So they did not have a time to manage it. Now, what happens when the monsoon is weak on the inflation? 2014 inflation increased by 7%. 2015, remember, it was the strong El Nino year. Inflation was only 5%. And in 2018, it was 4%. All 3 years, monsoon was below average, which is what SkyMet has been predicting. In other words, if government take proactive measures, either stopping export of the food grain production, making other measures, releasing food from the food corporates of India, the impact on the inflation can be mitigated. So not necessarily below average rainfall result into a higher inflation. 2014 we did not see, 2015 we did not see, 2018 we did not see. Now what is RBI saying in its prediction on inflation? RBI is saying that that CPI inflation would be 5.2% for FY 2024. And of course, they did not have a benefit of SkyMet prediction or the IMD prediction, but they did know that NOAA from the US, NOAA, had predicted El Nino. Am I right? So they did have some sense of what could happen, and they believe inflation would be 5.2% for FY 2024. Bifurcating quarter-wise, quarter 1 5.1, quarter 2 5.4, quarter 3 5.4, and quarter 4 5.2. So that's what they have given the indication. Now comes to the market part. What I did actually, I looked at what was the actual rainfall. Forget about prediction क्या था किसका भी. Real life में क्या हुआ? And what impact market had. What has come as a surprise to me, that market most of the time, whether it was a below average, average or above average, market moved up, except 1 year, that is 2015, which is a very severe, strong El Nino, which below average, market went down by 5%. Otherwise, like last, you look at 16, we had average rainfall, 2% market up. 2017, average rainfall market went up by 28%. 2018, below average, again market went up by 6%. So which clearly says that I think market is not too much Of course, there are other factors also which pull up or pull down the market, but doesn't looks like that monsoon can spoil the market sentiment in a very significant manner. So if I remove 2015 from the slide, everywhere we can see a green. Despite 2 years, or we had below average, if I remove 2015, then 2 years only, and 2 years of an average rainfall. So that's another gives an indication. Probability of too much impact on the food grade production is low. Impact on inflation is low. Impact on market is low. These are all probability. Remember, I know you people have a habit of, "Arey, you had suggested this, but ye to ye ho gaya." These are all the probability we are talking about based on the historical data that is available. Now, the question that comes to mind, agar monsoon kharab tha, what happened to the various sectors which are more dependent on the rural economy, like fertilizer is direct competition. Why? Because monsoon hota hai, to fertilizer hota hai. Cement, why? Because 40% of the cement demand comes from the rural housing. If the monsoon is weak, rural housing, cement demand for, if the monsoon is weak, people will not have a demand for the rural housing, and that in turn impacts cement. FMCG, because they do get a lot of revenue from this one. Textile, why? Because cotton is a textile. And the sugar. Now in 2014, these sectors moved up, whether it was fertilizer, there's an aggregate market cap, cement, FMCG, textiles and sugar. What happened in 2015? Fertilizer did move down. It was a severe, down by 29%, but other did not have much of an impact. In 2018, fertilizer went down, cement went down and sugar went down. So one good casualty could be out of 3. Be careful with the fertilizer stocks as we speak today. Why? Because it could impact the demand for the fertilizer. That looks more like a probability is very high. And this is all probability I'm talking about. Sugar, be careful. I think what comes out very clearly, the southern belt is not going to see any kind of, even including SkyMed, which has been a little more pessimistic as compared to IMD, they do believe that southern, except Kerala, they are saying that southern states will not have too much of a problem in terms of the rainfall. If that is so, those who are in the southern part of the sugar belt, I don't think they will have a problem. Those who are having in a northern belt could have an impact of lower sugar production. We all know that Maharashtra will have a lower sugar production, so is the case with Uttar Pradesh, and that could be a cause of concern with this sugar company. So I think you need to divide the sugar into which region they belong to. So what is the takeaway? What is the summary of this? Because I would try to as simple as possible, keeping in mind the audience that we have. I'm just summarizing what I just said. El Nino forecast does not mean that India will receive below average rainfall. That has been happened, if you remember this, of SkyMed, which I've said that, what did they predict? 93 in 2019, we got actually excess rainfall. So not necessarily that it will result into a lower rainfall. That's point number 1. Okay. El Nino should always be observed in conjunction with the IOD. IOD, how many people understand that IOD is nothing to do with the construction? IOD means Indian Ocean Dipole. It's a little technical word and I'll show you. So, if El Nino is strong, okay, but IOD is positive, the impact would be less. If El Nino is weak and IOD is strong, the rainfall would be good. So you have to look at both in conjunction. So when I'm afraid, I'm really surprised when I read some articles and when I talk to when you listen to some of this analysis and the fund manager, no one talks about IOD. El Nino and IOD should be talked in sync. And SkyMed has said that right now IOD is a neutral, but it may become a moderately positive as the monsoon begins. And that's a very positive. This is what SkyMed has been saying. In a worst case scenario, what we are talking about is a weak El Nino. We are not talking about moderate, strong or very strong El Nino. But no one harp on that adjective, weak El Nino. And I'm really surprised with that. So sometimes, some people want to create a scariness and don't do a reporting or analysis properly. Assume for some reason India receives a below average monsoon does not imply that every part of the country is going to receive below average monsoon. So thoda panic wala. Of course, few regions will receive below average monsoon. That happens even in the good time also. I must tell you that. I think it's very critical to understand which portion will receive below average monsoon, and that could have an impact on that particular produce from that place to get a idea, because every state has a certain peculiar production. Am I right? Gujarat doesn't produce soybeans, but Madhya Pradesh does produce soybeans, and so on and so forth. So we need to understand which region, what kind of rainfall happens. So not only we should look at the overall rainfall, but distribution of rainfall becomes very, very critical. Historical trend suggests that below average monsoon also market can move up. If you know our prediction for 2023, we have said that Indian market will give returns in tens. We almost cover whatever we lost in first 3 months in the month of April. Market is very close to the closing of 2022 level. Having said that, please note that this is not the final prediction from the IMD. IMD will make one more attempt to predict about the southwest monsoon in the last week of May. That is exactly near about 1.5 months from now, and there will be one more prediction from IMD which could be more closer to the reality than the first prediction. Now I was talking about the IOD. What I have done, I have compiled this data, okay, where I have put the El Nino effect and the IOD effect. Okay. Now if you look at it, what happened? There was a 2010 there was a strong La Nina, that is positive. So let me talk. Okay, in 2014, there was a weak El Nino. And even IOD was negative. It resulted into deficient rainfall, 88%. But in 2015, it was a very strong El Nino. But the IOD was positive. What happened? We did receive deficient rainfall. It did not result in too much. Had it very strong and negative, it would have had a very, very severe impact on this one. In 2019, there was a weak El Nino, but IOD was positive, and India received above normal monsoon, which I was talking about SkyMet prediction. So I think weak El Nino, and if it is a positive IOD, I think India can still receive above normal monsoon even in 2023. So remember, do not get, and even look at what we call La Nina. If La Nina was there in 2016, that means we should receive more. But there was a 2016, the IOD was negative. That's why we received near normal monsoon, not excess rainfall monsoon. Am I right? Normal or excess nahi mila tha. So we need to look at, understand, don't just go by El Nino in. You need to look at also the IOD, that is Indian Ocean Dipole. To understand, dipole is a simple pole dipole. Two. That's the way you should look at it. So in other words, just to mention that, first thing, probability of below average monsoon is not surety. If for some reason, if there is a below average monsoon in real also, that's what happens. Not necessarily each and every part of the country is going to receive a below average monsoon. Which food grade person gets impacted is a function of which region, what particular within that set, which region get what kind of rainfall, and is going to decide. Lower monsoon doesn't mean higher inflation. lower monsoon doesn't mean that Indian market can give negative returns. With this, let's open the floor for question and answer. Over to you, Jason.
Okay, starting off with this first particular question. This is by Sunil. Is it possible for government to do rain by cloud seeding just like in Dubai, or is it very expensive to do that?
So, sir, this experiment has been done in the past also. I have been informed it's a little expensive exercise. And second thing is not necessarily that it will always be successful. Of course, technology has become so advanced now, but it's very much possible. You are right, cloud seeding is very much possible in case. See, one good thing, I must tell you that fortunately we have a government who have been very proactive in terms of taking the right measures. And one of the best example of that was in 2020. How swiftly government acted, how swiftly they basically distributed food grain, how effectively they tried to reduce the spread of the virus without impacting, creating a financial burden on the economy. So I think, so fortunately we have a government which is going to be very, very proactive. And if you remember, the government last year also restricted export of wheat just to ensure that wheat, the inflation doesn't run away. I think government will do whatever needs to be done to ensure that it can be mitigated, the impact can be mitigated.
Okay, moving to this next question. This is by Nandu Kumar. Monsoon is expected to be normal or above normal in South India. That being said, can Coromandel International be a good pick at current prices? Your advice?
Nandu Kumarji, I have stated in my previous webinar also. See, you need to look at Coromandel as a lot of revenue coming from the southern part. And right now, the SkyMet which is predicted below average, is not predicting below average monsoon for the southern part. So you are right, it could be a good pick at the current prices.
Okay, also Mr. Frank has provided a good perspective. He says the meaning of Spanish in El Nino is little boy and La Nina is little girl.
You're right, sir. In fact, I wanted to mention, but I thought let me not get you bored with you boy and girl. But you're right, sir. Thanks for this information. I was aware. But those who are not aware, please they'll get this idea. Little boy and little girl.
Okay, moving on to this next question. This is by Sharad. This is 94% rainfall, that is shortage of 6% estimate by SkyMet. Is it a very grave situation?
No, it's not a grave situation, Saradji. I think you must have put this question before the webinar begins, so that's why. It is not a grave situation. We have seen that. So first thing is a prediction, number one. And normal का definition जो बता रहा था मैं आपको is 95 to 105. If you look at it here, let me take you back to the slide. If you look at it, the normal is 96 to 100. So what SkyMet is saying for 94, the moment, and there is a margin of plus and minus. If it is assume it's a upside on 5, then it becomes 99, and that's a normal monsoon. Am I right? So it is not a grave situation. Answer is no, sir.
Okay, I can see a lot of investors actually writing this particular statement on the chat box. They said that the US inflation declines to 5% versus the 5.2 expected with all the indices up. Do you think Indian market would be up tomorrow?
I think so, yes. Why? Because even India's inflation has come down. So I think it's a happy situation. Am I right? And I was discussing with Mohit today, and Mohit was also saying that a lot of people are now saying that there is a possibility of rate cut by some of the governor of the various central banks. So I think it's a happy situation to be in. But having said that, crude could be one joker in the pack that we need to all wait for. And what happens to the Taiwan? So yes, tomorrow the market could close in the green, could open in the green, sorry. Let me see what happens to the US market as we speak, because let me see. So US market as I speak, is up. Dow is up by 174%. So 174 points. Percent is too big. 23 Nasdaq and 16. थोड़ा marginal up है. ज़्यादा नहीं up है. So it's not that. So Dow is 0.52, S&P 5 is 0.41, and Nasdaq 0.19. Okay, let me put it this way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mr. Sunil, you're about to make that statement, but Shriyari has asked this that Sunil ji, more than El Nino, China-Taiwan conflict is a major cause of concern. Do you agree with this?
It is a cause of concern. Whether the adjective that you put a major cause of concern, answer is no at this point of time. But see, to be very frank with you, I was wrong completely with Ukraine and Russia crisis. I was not expecting, number one, the crisis to flare up. Number one, even if it played up, I was not in the camp that it would last more than a year. And the fact is that both happened. So you are right. Sir, see, conflict is a concern. Abhi kitna concern hota hai, how much it impact the market sentiment, what stand US takes, what kind of support US give it to Taiwan, and so on and so forth. In fact, I was reading one article which says that if at all Taiwan would be invaded, it could be invaded by 2028, not in 2023 or something of that sort. So, is it a concern? Yes, concern. Is it a major concern? My answer would be no.
Okay, moving on to this next particular question. This is by Ritesh Kumar. Can you give your view on all cargo logistics? Is it a better time for investment in the logistics sector? Also, can you suggest any other logistics stock?
Ritesh ji, my suggestion would be just go with the score right now. What is available on the score? Logistics as a sector should do extremely well. But, we all know that delivery, there's some stock has been sold by one of the private equity investors. So logistics as such has a very bright future. See, if India has to really replace China, we have to spend a huge amount of money on logistics, on the port facility, on the road infra, and the railway infra, because just by putting manufacturing plant is not going to, because you need the good has to move from the factory to the end customers, to the foreign ports, am I right? And that's where we need to have a massive capex in the logistics sector. So I'm extremely bullish on the logistics sector, but I'm also afraid, see, some of these companies within the logistics are not very high in terms of the corporate governance, and that's what makes me a little worry about, am I right? Number two, the name of the game in the logistics would be how quickly you can deploy machine learning, AI. People are talking about smart warehousing now. People are talking about smart fleet now, where you know where your fleet is at this point, or how long it's going to take, how fast you need to replace your warehousing, and so on and so forth. And that will call for a lot of amount of capex or the opex by the logistic company to put that to make them really smart. So while I'm optimistic on the logistic, I suspect not everyone would be able to participate in that logistic boom. Many would basically give way to some of the new age logistic players who would come and take over the markets from the traditional logistic companies.
Okay, Mr. Singh, a lot of investors actually spamming the chat box on this particular statement. They said TCS result is out. Can you quickly analyze it and let us know what's the future for the IT sector?
So I think the numbers have come below the market expectation. Rajesh did mention that's Rajesh Gopinathan I'm talking about, did mention that the Q4 did not pan out the way they were expecting it to pan out. And to that extent, it's a little disappointment. I could not attend, I don't know what is the outlook on the BFSI segment. So I could not do that because I was busy with some other stuff, and I don't think they made statement also. So we need to really, so one cause of concern or major worry that everyone would have is the outlook on the BFSI segment. So this BFSI segment has not done well, even for TCS in the fourth quarter. North America was very weak. If you look at the geographical growth for the fourth quarter, UK did extremely well. But the US was not, North America was not so good. So that could be a cause of concern. I think we need to wait for the commentary in terms of what happens on the vertical, that is BFSI, And number two, on the North America and the continental Europe, what happens there? Are they seeing some kind of slowdown? What impact they are seeing? Are the clients spending, not spending, so on and so forth? My sense is that attrition rate would have come down. I did not get a chance to look at it, so I don't know, but that would have come down. So overall, I think it's a mixed numbers for TCS. Depending upon what commentary they give, market will decide tomorrow what needs to be done. But I think I saw one research report from one of the leading broker saying that buy on the TCS as I speak to you.
Okay, moving on to this next question by Praful. Hello Sunilji, great presentation today. Today, fertilizer stocks have shown good buying. How do you see this in the light of weak rainfall predictions?
So I think the market is basically assuming that this monsoon could be good. Even though SkyMed has been saying that it's a below average, it could turn out to be good monsoon, and that's one reason. I think some of the company did move up because of in expectation that numbers for March quarter would be good. My sense is that going by the history, fertilizer stocks could face some challenges going forward. So be careful what company you get into within the fertilizer space, because those who have a more focus on the region where there is going to be deficit monsoon, they will certainly get impacted. Those who are from the south, which someone was asking about Coromandel, they should do very well. So my sense is that it has to be going to be a mixed bag. So don't get carried away by few stocks on the fertilizer. We did well. Be very, very mindful, because the future may not look very promising. Even though market may expect March 2023 numbers good, will they be able to repeat that in the subsequent quarter? That would be a big question mark. So don't get carried away by one-day price movement. And thanks for appreciating the efforts that we have made to make this presentation. It's the first time we made this presentation on monsoon and market, because the day markets were started, India normally has received good monsoon. तो ऐसा कोई आया नहीं कि जहाँ पे हमको प्रेजेंटेशन करना पड़े to talk about weak monsoon. So it took a lot of efforts. We need to gather a lot of data, because none of the data were available with us. We took a lot of efforts. The complete team spent day in and out to compile the data and make sense of the data to conclude in a very meaningful manner. So thanks a lot for appreciating Prafulji.
Okay, moving on to this next question by Soundarajan. India is predominantly an agricultural country where almost 75% farmers depend on monsoon rainfall. Since irrigation facilities are not available to all farmers, dependence on monsoon is very much there. How will this affect FMCG companies in particular?
So, sir, if you remember, I did cover that. So normally I try to preempt. Now, over the years, I've realized. So, if you look at 2014, can you see my FMCG company's overall market cap went up by 18%. In 2015, it moved up by 16%. And in 2018, it moved up by 11%. So, all 3 years when there was a weak monsoon, below average monsoon, FMCG companies have been able to improve their market. Of course, some would have gone up, some would have come down. But I'm saying overall, they did see a market cap improving. So going by that trend, I don't think much of a problem for the FMCG companies. Number one. Number two, input cost pressure for all FMCG companies have come down significantly. Whether it's a packaging cost, whether it's a raw material cost, that has come down significantly. And I think that should help them to expand their margins. So if you ask me, I'm not bearish on FMCG companies.
Okay, this question by Satya, and he says, do you see the steep rise in crypto market having any impact on equity markets?
I don't know, sir. I don't see any correlation between crypto market and the equity market. If at all there is a correlation, then I'm ignorant of that. Let me be very honest and frank with you. See, what gives me an idea, why would the crypto goes up? Crypto goes up, that means people are willing to have a bet on risk-on strategy. And my experience says that whenever there is a risk-on strategy, equity markets should do very well. The moment there is a risk-off strategy, if you remember 2022, equity market went down globally, crypto market also went down globally. Why? Because people there was a risk-off strategy. So that means people will not put money in equity and they will move to the other assets class, which is like debt or so. So the very fact that crypto is moving up, that means there is a risk appetite increase among the investors, which is good for the equity market.
Okay, Mr. Sunil, that's it with the Q&A session for today.
So thanks a lot everyone taking time out and attending this webinar. Remember, ज़्यादा tension नहीं लेने का. Even if there is a below average monsoon prediction, that number can get revised. Even if it is not get revised, it's all function of what IOD we have at the time of the monsoon season begins. And if that is positive, I think the impact of El Nino could be minimized. And due to that, we should not expect too much worry on the food grain, in turn inflation, and in turn the market. So right now, right now I'm saying, we may change our opinion as the new data points emerges, but right now our sense is that below average monsoon forecast from SkyMed is not at all a worry for the equity investors. Thanks a lot, Jason, for hosting this webinar. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Sunil, and thanks a lot everyone for attending today's event. I can see a lot of appreciation notes on today's presentation. Glad you all liked it. Tomorrow we would be having a webinar. I would be speaking about legendary investor Ray Dalio's investment strategies. I'll be shortly sending you all an invite for the same. Looking forward to seeing you all come for the event. Goodbye and have a great evening. Thank you so much.